Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Bwtm online. So this video is being broadcast on Bwtm online across all our major platforms. And something we stand by is by educating, inspiring, and empowering. So this is the first time I'm going to do a watch along. So it's for educational purposes only. I haven't watched this whole video. I watched the first. So I've only watched like the first 5 minutes of this video. It's a documentary that was done in America, and I found it just the start of it very educational. So I thought I'll finish watching it off. It's about half an hour. So without further ado, let me get myself into watch along mode, and let's get ready. Let's get ready to rumble, as they say. Let's see. Trying to set the way. Hope you can see that well. And let's go.
I don't have any trouble admitting that I'm a racist. I think it's absurd to try to fight with that. I grew up in this society. I was conditioned by it. I think internally in my psyche, I have grounded and rooted those attitudes, and I see it in me all the time.
I don't like being a white man, and that's where I still am and working on that, because I know what I've done, what people like me have done.
Part of being white is just not in any way acknowledging what it means to be
skin, and that with that white skin comes along a whole mess of privileges that I have, and I don't ask for them, they just are there.
You have started to break the code of silence a little bit when you start talking about white people and you start talking about this stuff, and you find yourself suddenly all alone.
The family history, as I understand it, was really, people coming to America as a way of searching for a better life and escaping poverty. And it has often seemed to me that also is where they came from, that there was a sort of a desire to separate from that and to become something different.
That I have Scotch-Irish ancestry with a little bit of German. I'm European, and I came over 250 years ago.
My ancestors are from England and Germany.
My ancestors are German and Russian and Scottish.
In my father's side, it was Irish, and my mother's side, it was probably English, but I don't know a lot about her side.
I'm French Indian. I guess you'd say I got a little Cajun in me.
Ireland. So do you identify as Irish?
No, not really. I identify as an American.
British, Scotch-Irish. Scotch, that's where my ancestors are from, supposedly, but hasn't had any impact on me. Doesn't mean anything.
I think pilgrims. When I think of where did I come from, I think pilgrims, but no, but I'm sure somewhere down the line I am.
Because they were Irish, there was a lot of oppression, because they immigrated over from Ireland. So I thought a lot about what that was like for them as Irish people, but I never thought about what it was like for them and when they became white.
Well, you can only be something if there's something else to negate it. So I guess we became white. I guess we're white because there's a bunch of other races to set us off.
So how did English people and German people get turned into white?
Came to America.
By assimilation, by living. Living in the U.S. The smorgasbord, you know.
I have no idea. I honestly have no idea.
Do you know how they got turned into British and Scottish people? How those people got turned into white people?
No.
You ever thought about that?
I'm not a history buff.
I think culture did that over time. Like certain words that we use in our language are not our words, they're other nations, other words that come from other languages.
How did the Irish get turned into white people?
That's a good question.
I think a lot of it was early assimilation in the United States, a lot of European ethnics coming over, assimilating for a variety of reasons. Primary one being a desire to elevate their socioeconomic status. So to get jobs, to find places to live, alter their last names to sound more mainstream. A lot of them changed the clothing that they wore, the foods they ate. So there was this, some might call it assimilation. I think of it more as Anglo-conformity, conforming to this kind of dominant white culture.
But the reality is that those persons who are white and who are considered white and treated as such in this society, by virtue of being white and treated that way, have had to give up who they really were. If they were Russian American, my father's side of the family, grandfather's side, great-grandfather came here from Russia in 1910. He had to give up what it meant to be a Jew, a Russian Jew from Eastern Europe, to become an American, which really meant to become white. The Irish had to do the same thing. The Italians had to do the same thing. The Greeks had to do the same thing. All these European ethnics who were not white Anglo-Saxon Protestants had to give up their actual identities for the sake of whiteness.
I really didn't think about being white, I'd say, growing up, because mainly I think because I was part of the majority and I maybe wasn't forced to think about it.
I don't think it means anything. It's just, some people might think it means better, but to me it doesn't mean anything but just the color of my skin.
How often do you think about being white?
Not very often. I really don't think about it a lot at all.
Hardly ever. It's just me.
Racially, do you see yourself as a white person?
No, I see myself as a person.
So you ever think about being a white person?
No.
Probably not very often.
Not really. Sometimes I got a lot of black friends. Sometimes we make jokes about it and everything, but
Not really. It doesn't matter to me whether I'm white, pink, or purple, or black. I don't care.
depends on the social situation. Sometimes I'll be the only white person in the room when it's reversed, when the tables are sort of flipped.
How do you identify racially? Do you see yourself as a white man?
I think that everybody is equal in the eyes of the Lord.
So you don't see yourself as a white person?
Not as much as most people. I think when it's all said and done, we're equal, and definitely inside and outside.
But I don't know if I ever considered myself white or thought about it. At one point I'm shade, but I don't really have any recollection of when it was, which I think is a total reflection of whiteness, of never having to sort of contemplate why people treat you the way they do.
To be white means to be a member of a dominant racial group in a society that I consider white supremacist. And to be white in a white supremacist society, not just a racist society, because that's almost too generic, to be white in a white supremacist society is to be able to have the luxury of oblivion, to be oblivious to the injustices, to be oblivious to racial privilege, to be oblivious, frankly, to one's own identity. So it is, in a sense, to be invisible to oneself.
Well, I think to be white in this culture means to deny the reality of racism. And it means to deny the privilege that we have as whites. Most people who are whites don't want to accept that they are privileged because they are.
People don't want to talk about being white because they know that at a deep level, even though they haven't even, some of them may not have ever talked about it with anybody or ever expressed it, they do know that they get a benefit from being white.
If you're white in this country, there's certain that come your way, and it doesn't really matter whether you want to or not, or whether you're in touch with it or not.
Now I know there are privileges that I enjoy simply because I'm white.
Every minute of my life, I'm aware of my white privilege, of the fact that I have a white skin, and that with that white skin comes along a whole mess of privileges that I have, and I don't ask for them, they just are there.
There are things that come to me, that belong to me, that I'm given and that I expect just because I'm white, that I never wonder about, ask about, discuss. And that's the power of it, is that the privilege of expecting that I'm going to go to good schools and that I'm going to have choices no matter what, that there will always be a choice that will be probably pretty reasonable, that will work out pretty well for me.
To me, it's about privilege. A lot of people get to walk around thinking that we live in a meritocracy and hard work is the only thing that's, responsible for their achievements. I think that it means, it has, and I think that it shapes everything.
White privilege is probably the freedom to move through the world fearlessly in a way that Black people cannot move through the world. That you can take advantage of opportunities with much less fear and an assumption that you'll be treated equally with all other white people.
Part of it is not having to even think about it. And so in a way, it's sort of like the privilege of having that space in your mind and about other things. So it's not even having to think about race is part of the privilege.
White privilege is being able to walk into a department store and not be followed by the detective.
A friend of mine who's Asian American, she was very unfairly treated at a department store. She was at a cosmetics counter, and she had bought something and it came with a free gift. So the woman at the counter put the free gift in the bag, and my friend didn't know that the free gift had already been put in the bag, so she had grabbed the one on the counter and put it in the bag unknowingly. Just as the sweetest woman, wouldn't hurt a fly. And they called the cops on her, and she was taken to jail and arrested. I put myself in the same position that she was at, and I know there's no way I would have been arrested. I know I would not have been arrested.
It's the assumption that when you go to buy a car that you're going to have the money. Well, it's the assumption that when you go into a real estate office looking for a place to rent, unless you wear raggedy clothes, it's that you're going to want to go into this nice neighborhood.
You basically get to say what you want to, be any way you want to. You get privilege. You don't have to work as hard. You can slack off and job and still not have to worry about somebody coming after you. So whiteness to me is about privilege and access to information systems and people and power that you didn't earn.
I went through a time where I was poor and I had to take care of my father, and I worked with about 100 African American men, and I was the only white male on the shop floor. And I was really horrible at this job. It was a metal grinder. I'd grind too much of it. I'd make big indentations. I was constantly messing up, and I was sure I was going to get fired. It was just a matter of time. And about 6 months into the job, the boss and a few of the managers come over. They're all white men. And I thought, this is it. This is the day I'm getting fired. And they came over and told me that they've had their eye on me and they think that I'm management material. I said, what? Yeah. And they said, yeah, you stick around for a while and we think you've got potential to be a manager here.
It's all embedded in every piece of our country. It's embedded in every structure that we have. It's embedded in our economics. It's embedded everywhere.
When I walk into a bank, or when I walk into anybody's neighborhood, or when I walk into anybody's store, that I'm acceptable. I want. And I'm seen as an acceptable person. And the reason I am acceptable is because I'm white.
I remember when I was going to get my driver's license renewed for the first time. I really couldn't see very much without glasses. I didn't have any glasses with me. They had you go to one of these machines you look in and see like what letter it is and etc. I couldn't see any of it. I was one of the few white people there. And the guy behind the desk was this older white guy. And he just said, oh, don't worry about it, go ahead. I was like, is he just letting everybody through? And I saw that he wasn't. And I kind of was like, oh, okay.
It's the ability to walk into the bank in Savannah when we were ready to build our house and borrow $100,000, and neither one of us were working. I mean, so incredible that we could do that. I mean, of course we had to present, we had to give them facts and figures and all that kind of thing, but if you were a person of color and you walked in and you said, well, we're neither working and they're going to loan you $100,000, I don't think so.
Oh, simple things. I mean, from everything from the ease of getting a bank loan to knowing that I can drive just about anywhere in the city and not get stopped because of my color by the police.
When I drive down the road and I get pulled over by a police officer, it's probably because either I've broken the law or I'm getting a flat tire and the police officer's going to tell me I'm getting a flat tire.
Well, when I get pulled over, I don't get tickets, I'm a white woman, middle class, in a minivan. I get pulled over all the time for speeding. And it's almost become a joke. And then, the police officers apologized to me for pulling me over, and I know if I was a person of color, that wouldn't happen, I know that I would be pulled over a lot more if I was a person of color because I speed every day. And so I get stopped, they look at my license, and then they let me go,
I've experienced whiteness on the 3 occasions that I've been put in a car. One time I ran a red light, it was turning red, right? Another time I was speeding, another time I had a headlight out. And every single time I got off with a warning. I never got a ticket for any of those things. It was privilege and whiteness, therefore, that helped get me off. And I think for the average person, it would be whiteness that would allow me not to even have to think about why. I could get away and thinking, oh, I sweet-talked my way out of that. I did, but I was aided by the fact that I'm white.
They're not going to do a body check on me. They're not going to rip my car apart looking for a reason to haul me in. I'm not profiled. That's white privilege.
Basically, when I go to city council or county commission, I expect my representatives to take me seriously. And they do for the most part, because they know that they have to be, the white community has more power and money and can vote them out of office.
We as white people have a sense of what our rights are, that we have the right to, live well, live safely, have health care and police that respond to us, have city officials that pay attention to us, have, the needs of our community, be able to have those met. And I think that if you talk to people of color or look at communities of color, that does not exist for people. That idea of those rights.
The more I know, the more it's like, I've really got to talk about privilege here, you know? Even though, I mean, I faced a lot of shit in my life. I mean, I really had all this stuff happen, but I still had whiteness in a way that's given me all this stuff.
And it's all these things which not only give you privilege in the sense of stuff and access to stuff, but also it validates who you are. You know, so you have this feeling that, you know, I'm important, I'm worthwhile, that other people don't have. You know, they have to get it somewhere else. You know, they might get it from their family or what have you, but I'm going to get it from everyone. You know, with few exceptions.
I was taught that you respected black folk, but not really as human beings, more like cats and dogs and cows. You wouldn't mistreat a cat or a dog in my family. And you wouldn't mistreat a black person.
I don't have any trouble admitting that I'm a racist. I think it's absurd to try to fight with that. I grew up in this society. I was conditioned by it. I think internally in my psyche, I've grounded and rooted those attitudes, and I see it in me all the time. I mean, I'm always dealing with it. I don't think that makes me a bad person. You know, I don't think that means that I've grounded in original sin or anything. It just means I've been well indoctrinated. But it does also call me to do.
I consider myself somebody who does racist things and acts on the racism I have within me because of the context of the world in which I grew up and live in.
For me, individually, is to recognize and acknowledge that I have the power of race in me, and that I'm going to be. I don't believe I'll ever have a time when I look at anybody and don't see their racial classification first.
Oh, I hate to admit it, but I still have thoughts that I'm smarter than some black people just because of skin color. I mean, I'm sorry, but that still crosses my mind.
Stereotypes will pop in my head just like everybody else, you know. When I see somebody, a stereotype will pop up, and then I have to say, no, you know, that's a prejudice.
When I'm in a classroom of students, I'll tend to look at the white students more than I'll look at the black students. And when I realized I was doing that, I was shocked. And I tried immediately to begin to train myself to stop doing that. And it was astonishingly difficult. There was something about a natural tendency to look at white faces in a way that I did not have the same natural tendency to look at black faces. And I think that's a kind of an ingrained, inborn racism is all I can think of it as.
I remember I was
institutional
talking with a young man named Sylvester, and he was saying, "You're racist." And I'm going, "I'm not." He's going, "You are." "I'm not." You know, we went back and forth like that for a while. And then I had to go get refreshments. So I said, "Hold on." And I went upstairs, and my mother turned to me and she said, "Get a grip on yourself. You know, you're a white young girl. You've grown up in the racist society. You're racist. Deal with it. Move on." But that was, you know, that was an amazing gift that my mother gave me, because it allowed me to turn all of my defensiveness about it into, oh, well, maybe I am.
Racism and prejudice are very different things. And all of us have grown up with prejudices. Some of us have prejudice against people of color. Some people have prejudice against white people. And some of us are downright awful about it.
Because so much of the focus is on personal prejudices. That's how I think a large part of the U.S. population analyzes race matters, is between different groups of people.
Well, I think it works the same way. If black people feel that white people can be racist towards them, I don't see any difference between a black person being racist towards a white person.
In high school, the high school I attended was probably 60% black, 40% white. And being white and in a majority black class, I was picked on and teased for that. So
sometimes you come across people that feel because of what had happened in the past that we're held responsible. I'm 30 years old. I wasn't around when that was happening.
I know what it feels like to be subjected to anger for something that I personally never did.
if we're in the wrong place sometimes, it's obvious that we're in the wrong place, we're the wrong color to be in that place, you'll hear a comment. You'll hear some things that's not so nice that you would never think that you would hear. You're a little too white to be in this neighborhood.
When I was teaching, I was not privileged because I had to interact with a lot of stereotypes about white people, and I had to deal with them on that level. But I was privileged in the sense that I got the job in the first place.
I think that one of the key things to understand about racism is like a Cadillac. There's a new model every year, you know, and you know it's racism is a dynamic social construction, so it's always changing, it's always mutating. So people that say, well, there's no racism anymore, they're referring to racism as it existed in, you know, 1950 or 1920 or 1910.
Racism permeates every aspect of our society, and it's made, you know, a world that we live in that's very unequal.
It isn't what you personally did or did not do. And I think that's such a hard leap for white people to make, is like, it isn't something that I personally did, but it's something I personally have to work against.
It ain't just a matter of who I am as a person or what I think or feel about other people.
I think there's a hierarchy in our country that's based very clearly on skin color and on people's perceptions of what race you're in. And white are at the top and black are at the bottom, and Asian and Native American and people of sort of light brown hue are in the middle, and Latinos are down, you know, and then blacks are at the bottom.
Racism is not simply about how we get along on an individual level, but it has to do with who has institutional and social power.
White people have the political and social power in our society, and that is a given. And if you look at if you pick apart social and political situations, you can see that very clearly. I think it's quite obvious.
Whites get privilege and experience the advantage of being in a system that thinks white is better than, you know, than folk of color, and so there's all this unearned advantage that's going on all the time.
Particularly in a society like the United States, it's hard to confront racism unless you understand how, if you're racialized as white, you benefit from racism.
Just because I am white and have these privileges, I participate in a racist system. And that doesn't make that, it's not my fault. I can't help it. I'm born to it. And, you know, and that's what being white means.
But I do think and assume that white privilege is in fact that you can't avoid.
All I got to do is sit down and close my eyes, and things are going to just move forward in sort of in white interests. And there's a way in which I'm complicit. I collude. I don't say anything. I don't do anything to stop it or challenge it. And in that way, I really do think that's how racism works, and that's a way in which I'm racist. And the difference now is that I don't try and prove to anyone else or even to myself that I'm not racist. I sort of assume that, know that, and get on with doing anti-racist work as best I can.
I believe that the very depth of understanding racism is understanding that process of us becoming white, you know, historically us becoming white, and exactly what does that mean to be white, and how much of our humanity that we've lost. Because I think that the only way that whites can truly regain our humanity that's lost to the degree at which we've bought into white is through doing anti-racism work in anything that we do.
Like a lot of people, you start to learn exactly how messed up our society is in terms of racial disparity. And you realize that you're in the privileged class, you know? And especially for me, being a queer feminist woman, I in no way wanted to identify myself with an oppressor society, an oppressor group. And that was really hard for me.
Calling myself white, that's been hard to actually say I'm a white person. It took longer than me recognizing that I was a white person. You know what I mean? To go around and say I'm white.
Get comfortable with it.
Right, with that. Like I was aware that I was one of those, but it's, you know, it's been a process of being able to say all the time, you know, I'm a white feminist.
It's taking the onion and it's unpeeling the onion, you know, of how racism permeates everything around us.
I am white. I am, you know, middle class, English speaking, and seeing that as tools that I can use, and also claiming my identity communally as part of this white community, and seeing that, you know, the work that I need and want to be doing is in the white community.
What we have got to do is use the power that we have because of the privilege to kind of tear down those things in the system that hurt other people.
For me, I haven't been able to give up white privilege because you can't until the system is eradicated. It's going to be there. But by struggling against it, by fighting against it, by consciously making a decision to turn against it, I can release myself. I can say to myself, you know what, I'm still receiving these benefits and that's horrible, but at least I'm out there doing something about it. And so there's a sense of freedom. There's a sense of being, of really claiming my humanity.
As a white person, I have leverage. It's kind of funny because as a poor person, I never had leverage, but as a white person, I have leverage. And a woman, I didn't have much leverage either. But as a white person, they take what I say as being more valid. It doesn't seem self-interested to them.
I mean, I have connections with the judge. I have connections with the guy in the bank. I have connections everywhere with people that have power who can make decisions around policy, you know, procedures, just all kinds of things. So at that level, I can use my influence.
What has been a challenge for me, and where my greatest challenges have been, is on how I can personally use the positions that I'm in to help to change the institutions in ways that make it possible for them to really be allied with communities of color and accountable to communities of color. And where people who come to work in those institutions can begin to come into them without feeling like they have to code switch, or without feeling like they have to put on another persona in order to survive.
There's this whole world out there that I had no idea about. And as far as I can see, people of color, the ones that I have been close to, and the communities that I've been around, have a lot more figured out about how to be human beings than white people do. I think because we're cast as oppressors, we've had to get rid of a lot of pieces of ourselves that are human, and it's deadened us to a lot. I mean, it's deadened our sympathies and our empathies and our heart to other people.
I think that not knowing that you come into this world with all this privilege makes us, you know, doesn't make us good people, in the sense that it doesn't make us, I'll take that back, doesn't make us the people we could be. It takes away from who we really are as true human beings when we start applying when you start benefiting from something that you didn't earn and you don't acknowledge and you don't do something about.
If you're going along with the status quo and you're not doing something to make change, you're part of the problem. And I think a lot of white people don't want to have that discussion. When we pretend that our school systems are okay and that the criminal justice system is okay and media depictions are okay, and we just go along with it, we are part of the problem.
If I do nothing in this world because it is set up for me and mine, and because the systems operate for my benefit, then I am perpetuating that system. I am letting it go on. And I am benefiting every day from it.
Okay, that was whitewashed, and I just thought I'd put that on, put that video out there, and for you to have a look at it. I will use videos like this. I'm going to use a lot more videos in sport as well to educate. And that's what all this is about, educate. You can make your minds up about it afterwards. But as long as it's out there and I start putting videos like that out there, watch alongs, they're your opinions. It's your opinions that matter. So, I hope you enjoyed that video. For those of you who want to check it out, it's Whiteness on YouTube. You can check it out. So, again, the video is just for educational purposes. But for those people that say racism doesn't exist, then pay what buy one next time, bro. All right, how long's that one? Is it long? I want to play you one as well. How long is it? Let me look it up. I'll look it up, and if I've got time to put it back on, I'll definitely put it on for you. That'll be the next video I'll do a watch along with. Okay. Let me know what you think of the video. That was not actors. That's all genuine. Those were real people, and you can always. It says the link is there, and you can check it out. And as one of the men most beautifully said, that if you don't admit the racism is there, then you're part of the problem. It's a small majority that think like these days, Ingram. I'm afraid to say it's a small majority, like the 1%, and it's the 1% that affect our laws, our rules, and it's a small minority that have the power to oppress many. So nothing's changed in that sense. So right, I'm out of here. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.